you today to the Link Talks podcast. I'm here with Pastor Keith Brown from Thornapple Valley Church.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And we're going to have a great discussion today about some things like transition, succession, just a little bit of your journey, a little bit of your story. Why don't you take just a minute, kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so Keith Brown, I've got a beautiful wife and 4 kids. My son is actually with us in the studio right now. You guys can't see him, but
son of my right hand.
Son of my right hand, Benjamin. Yes,
Benjamin.
So we did A, B, C, and D. So Alana being Christian, Delaney. So 17. Ben will be 16 in January, and then we've got 12 and 10, and been in ministry 25 years.
Were y'all planning on going through the alphabet?
I know.
All the way to A to Z?
Nope. I was good with A and B. Which, by the way, kids, if you see this, I love you, Christian and Delaney. I just...
C and D, we're glad you showed up.
Yeah, I mean... I started off in youth ministry, so I didn't know where I was going, but yeah, God blessed us with 4, and we love it, and been in ministry, like I said, 25 years, love it.
Yeah.
I got the gray hairs to prove it.
Man, how many of us have cut our teeth in youth ministry?
Yeah.
How many years were you in youth ministry?
So I was in youth ministry about 15 years.
Yeah.
Actually,
I was in youth ministry for about 15.
Okay.
Yeah. So cool. Not that we want to look at youth ministry as a stepping stone. That was one of the things that kind of, tweaked me a little bit when people were kind of using it as a stepping stone to ministry or whatever. I thought I was a lifer. I've actually got a good friend that he's probably 70 now. He's still doing youth ministry. So anyway, that's beside the point. So went from youth ministry, then what'd you do after that?
So after youth ministry, did some church planting with a mentor of mine. Then
now in that church planting phase, were you like on the team, or were you like the lead pastor? Kind of what'd that look like?
Yep. So I was part of the lead team.
Okay.
And yeah, there in the beginning and really a part of the team.
Yeah.
But the senior leadership team.
Cool. Awesome. And then from there, what'd you do?
Then I did associate pastor, and then senior associate pastor, and then lead pastor.
So man, you've just climbed the ladder.
I guess.
Yeah. So talk to our Link family a little bit about, you've had a lot of transitions there. So what does that look like, and what did you learn from it? Maybe what can you pass on to somebody that may be in that journey themselves?
Well, like you said, so when I started in youth ministry, I remember if you talked about teenagers, I'd start crying. I had such passion for it. And I think for me, I never really sought to make a transition. It just kind of came in time. I remember when we had our second kid, and I remember distinctly speaking, and my kid was in the back and she's walking up to the stage. And my wife was kind of like, hey, Keith, I don't know that I can be with you at the all-nighters anymore. And so one day you grow up and you just go, hey, I think something is changing in me. And then prayer, discernment, and open doors really were really what caused me to make a transition out of stuff. But I never tried to be anxious, but being somebody who has a lot of passion and drive, it's hard to sit still.
Yeah.
But I've tried to really be faithful, and through faithfulness, open doors and confirmation have really been the next steps.
And that may be something that somebody is learning right now, is to be faithful in the season that you're in. God says, if you'll be faithful with another man's, then I can trust you with your own. So, and I was thinking too, also, a lot of times we get anxious about what that next step is, what that journey looks like. And really, we need to chill a little bit and have confidence that the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord.
Yeah.
We wish they were leaps and bounds, but they have to be steps. Yeah. So being patient in those seasons. What do you think is one of the biggest things that you've learned in transition?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is, number one, they don't all happen the same way. Yeah. So I remember making a transition from youth ministry to senior ministry. I remember the day I began to kind of fantasize about being on the stage more often, leading, doing more counseling and stuff like that. And the way that transition happened was kind of a smooth, kind of easy transition, whereas my transition into senior leadership was more complicated and it had different things. So I think that's one of the things that I learned is that they don't all happen the same. But then I've also learned really taking time to get clarity in those transition moments, which is
that's good.
The most difficult part when you're in transition is you don't feel clear and certain like you used to be. But if you slow down enough to take those prayer retreats, to meet with your wife if you got a spouse, and do a lot of soul searching and bring a team around you. When I had clarity that it was time for me to transition, whether it was smooth or bumpy, I knew I was on the right track.
Right, yeah.
And that's what gave me the fire to go through the whole process.
Yeah, I like that. If you don't have clarity in yourself, then when you get into the rough waters of whatever you're going into, because, I mean, we all understand ministry is pain. You know, ministry comes with pain. You're going to encounter people that don't see things the way you do, or you're pouring out your life and people don't take it for granted, whatever. But you just need that anchor in your soul that you know God sent me here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great anchor, man. I love that. So in your journey, like say from senior leadership, you talked about being like an associate pastor. There's a level of weight that you carry, whether you're a youth pastor or whether you're, serving as a volunteer, whatever. There's a certain weight of the ministry that you carry, but there's a different dynamic when you step into that senior pastor role.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's night and day. It really is. And when you sit so close to the fire, you think you feel it. But when literally every decision is sitting on your shoulders, and you see every nuance of the situation, you wish you could go back and tell your former self, hey, this is what it feels like to have that pressure. And you become less critical because you know how it is. The Bible's clear, but not every decision is like black or white. There's multiple ways to do things. So I think it really is a night and day difference between the two of the weight, the responsibility. But I also have found as I matured making decisions and got greater confidence, gave me the confidence to make the decisions that I'm making now. The other thing I will say is having success in those lower stages. And when I say lower doesn't mean less important. It's just, you're talking about organizationally. I have confidence when I make leadership decisions about my youth ministry because I took a long time to learn how to do youth ministry really well.
Yeah.
I have confidence when I'm doing adult ministry decisions because I lived in that space, and I have a team of about 10 or 12 pastors that I pastor. And literally I've sat in every one of their chairs. And so I know what it feels like. So I think that's one of the benefits of a slow process too, is it gives you, I don't have the natural gift of empathy. There's some people who, they just start crying. You just talk to them, they start crying. And I love those people. I'm just not that guy, but I have to get the pain.
Yeah.
I've had some moments, disappointments, setbacks. I know what it's like to not get the budget that you want. I know what it's like to disagree and have to support. So I think that that's been a big part of it too, is that putting myself back in those shoes has helped me make good decisions at this stage. That's
really good, Keith. I'll tell you, if I look back on some of my experiences and if you think about purifying gold or silver, you get in that crucible, right? And the fire is hot. But what does that do? It brings the dross to the surface. I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot in those times of being the subordinate, being under, and having to submit, being humble, maybe even agreeing to disagree, and sometimes maybe my heart wasn't right too. But the dross, the things that God needs to kind of filter out of your life in order for you to go to the next stage. So if you're on staff at a church and you're thinking about where you're at in your position and there's a little angst going on, then you might want to stop and take a little breath and say, Holy Spirit, what are you doing? What are you doing here? What are you working in me? So how did you discover, if you will, that calling to go into that lead pastor role?
Yeah. So I'm in my early to mid 40s.
We'll say early.
Let's just say early. And, when you're in your 20s, everybody's doing youth ministry or kids ministry or something like that, or being a worship pastor. Then you get into your 30s, everybody's an associate pastor. And then when you get late 30s, hitting into your 40s, at least for me, kind of like when you were dating, everybody was getting married. All of a sudden, all your other friends are becoming senior pastors. And you're like, when is it going to happen for me? Yeah. So I always had that fire and that passion. It was the issue about open doors and that sense of, God, is it clear for me? And I could have chased some things, but one of my principles of life is being spirit led. And when I didn't have peace, I didn't run after it. So.
Yeah. How important do you feel like the relationships that we have around ourselves is important to God helping us get to that place that He wants us to be?
Yeah, I think that's the name of the game. I think, so when I'm emotional, when I am excited, which I guess you could also say is emotional, when I have some type of other motive, it's very easy for me to miss God. But when I have people around me giving me perspective, they kind of help sharpen and confirm what really is going on inside of me. And so that's why I think it's important. A lot of people make a lot of decisions in unhealthy places and they live to regret those. And by God's grace, I've had people sharpen me. So I have regrets, but not about the big life decisions, because I had people stretching me, challenging me. And I would even say the prophetic voice is huge. Yeah. People saying, and sometimes people who are very naturally gifted with prophecy, and sometimes people who are not even spirit-filled in the way you and I understand it, would just say, hey, I just sense this is what God's saying, or this is not right for you. So having a heart to heed has been huge for me. Yeah,
that's awesome. I've found in relationships, in order for them to be valid in your life and to be significant, like you're talking about, someone that I have to give entrance, right? And we got to be careful who we give entrance to. But there's got to be a place in our heart where we give entrance to someone to see behind the veil in order for them to be able to speak clearly and, authentically into the situations that we're dealing with. So I don't know where that comes from. Somebody might need to hear that today. But I know relationships are key. I say sometimes, and this may be not very theological, but it's not what you know, it's who you know, because if you look in the scripture, it's like everybody's opening doors for everybody else, right? And so that's another side point.
I think it's Maxwell who calls it who luck.
Okay, elaborate on that.
So instead of just luck, is like who you know, it brings a certain luck to your life, and being well connected. And oftentimes it's paying the price to invest in relationships too.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. Okay, so in your story, what has it been about? How long have you been at Thornapple now?
So we're in our third year.
Third year. Yeah. Okay. So about 3 years ago, you came into a relationship, door opened for you. Pastor Jeff Arnett, who is one of the saints in this whole community around here, just a tremendous pastor, has been faithful all these years, planted that church, has pastored that church for like 40 years or whatever. And now he invites you to come and step in and make a transition of leadership. You know, succession is a pretty delicate thing, as I've been observing it recently in just different pastors at different churches, or even succession. I remember I planted at Christ for the Nations, I launched a thing called Youth for the Nations. And the very next year, I had to make a succession plan to a good friend of mine who took it where I couldn't probably have taken it. But so succession is kind of a little delicate thing to walk through. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like as you came into that opportunity, and maybe some of the key elements that made it successful.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of it. The first thing is, I think if you're going to be a successor, it's good for you to have some success behind you too, which is why don't despise those days where God's developing those things within you.
Exactly.
But then secondly, going back to that relationship thing, is really having an honoring relationship to the person who sowed before you. If you don't have that kind of honor, you're going to have a real hard time, because I'm constantly reminded as I pastor these incredible people that, you know, Jeff was there when many of them, when they were born. I mean, heck, Jeff could have been there when I was born, you know what I mean? Jeff has been there through many people's first marriage, second marriage, buried their relatives. So really starting with that position has really been a big part of what has made that relationship work. But at the same time, if you had some success behind you, then the goal is to take it to the next level. Because I remind myself, God called Jeff for his season. Now it's my season. So I love Jeff. I just don't want to be Jeff, and Jeff doesn't want me to be him. But I think if you're coming from a place of insecurity and you try to mimic the guy who went before you, you know, I always like to think that God gave Moses a rod, gave Joshua a sword. They had different missions, even though it was the same big picture calling. So that's part of it.
Same tribe. Yeah. That's really good. I like that, you know, giving honor to whom honors due. That's huge. But then also walking in a sense of confidence in what you're called to do and what you're called to plant. Get real with us here for a minute. What was probably the most difficult thing in the transition?
Oh, man. This is one I wasn't really prepared for. I think, so being somebody who has a lot of high drive, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much growth you bring, there are just going to be people who don't like it. So the way I was thinking about this on my way coming over here was the idea of, you have to learn how to lament with people and lead them at the same time. And that's a delicate balance, because they may be lamenting about something that meant a lot to them. It might have been healthy, it might be unhealthy, but you got to do that, but you also have to lead them to the next thing. So really spending a lot of time in that really care and caring about something that means something to other people that may not mean the same deal to me. And like I said, because empathy is like not my highest spiritual gift, that's been a stretch, and it's really caused me to go deeper.
Well, especially if you're making that transition and you've got a lot of tenure there with people, and you're trying to bring something new. even the best transition, you're going to have fallout. I've never seen a 100% retention of anything that's transitioned, because some that have the old mantle just can't put on the new mantle. It's like old wineskins without being able to be renewed with the whole Holy Spirit and the new vision. So, okay, so talk to us a little bit about, because what I really like about your journey and what has been accomplished at Thornapple is that you've not only been able to make the succession, but you've also been able to help Pastor Jeff find a place of significance and retain honor and help him get into his next season, because he wasn't done. He just transitioned. He refired to another opportunity in his life. Talk to us a little bit about how you manage that.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be very unique to the context, because Jeff is still a gifted communicator. But just the day-to-day stuff was the part where he recently told me, he said, you know, Keith, sometimes I miss the work, but I never miss the weight of making those hard decisions. So I think getting to know whoever it is that you're journeying with is really important. And just like we go through changes, there are certain days where I think he wakes up and he's got a lot of fire for something. Another day he wants to hang out with his grandkids. And so it's just being able to understand who he is and journey with him has been really a mutual kind of understanding. Yeah. And then we've made some agreements that I think have been really important to our relationship. He always tries to cheer for me in public. Yeah. I try to also honor him in public as well, even though, you know, we're just different people. We have different ways of doing things. And then secondly, like I said, I try to give him space. I mean, Jeff is a staff member, but he's like no staff member that we have, you know. So giving him space has been good. And us really trying to do what's best for the church, not for our mutual interests. And there's sometimes where what I may think would push me forward in the moment might not be the best thing. And I'm talking about things like making a change. Might not be the best thing for the church right now. And the same thing, even Jeff just giving his opinion about something could create a level of division. And he's been really respectful about that.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks for being here today. Thanks for this conversation. But before you go, I want you to look in the camera there and maybe just give some, you know, seasoned advice to maybe some of our young leaders as they're coming up through the ranks. Yeah. Any parting thoughts you'd like to give them and challenge them in their transitions, in their growth, as they are trying to be faithful to the Lord in their calling?
Yeah. Well, let me talk to those who are stepping into a senior level leadership role first. I would say a few things. Number one, if you're going to step in and do that successful, you need to create early wins. That is important for momentum and your credibility. Number two is you need to create collaboration. Because you are the new person, you need people on your team. You don't have the same level of confidence that people had in the old guy as they had in you or the former guy. Yeah. Then the third thing I would say is you need to create easy off-ramps and easy on-ramps, because you said it so beautifully, is the idea that not everybody's going to love you. Not everybody's going to be with you. And people will leave your church. You do get a say in how they leave your church. And if you make it safe for them to leave, and then you make it easy for new people to leave, those transitions can be positive. And then the last thing I would say is if you're in a frustrated state right now, one of my life verses is Galatians 6:9. Do not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season you will reap a harvest if you don't give up. It's just learn how to stay connected to God, stay connected to that passion, that calling in you, and stay connected with people who can help grow you and mentor you. And remember, what you're doing right now is really setting you up for what you're going to be doing later.
All right, man, we've enjoyed having you guys with us today, and we trust that you are walking away with some good nuggets in your own life. And what I would just leave you with is this: be faithful in the small things, and God will entrust you with the larger things. Don't despise the day of small beginnings, too. That was a good word that you dropped in there. You know, what you are doing right now, you may feel like is so insignificant, but just your faithfulness, just your commitment to excellence will see God be able to empower you with favor. And one day of favor with the Lord is worth 1,000 days of labor. Hey, it's been great to have you. Thanks for joining us on Link Talks Podcast.